All right, everyone. I have a treat. So, on this podcast, I have not spent a lot of time talking about parenting issues. I've just spent a little bit, and that's because I feel like this is an area that I'm still growing in. And my kids are 19 and 21. So I'm running out of time to practice. So instead of talking about me and my parenting, I decided to bring on someone else who is an actual parenting coach. So today we have Kristin Schmoke, and she is a mother of four, a teacher, and a parent coach. And she works to train parents for the most important job title of mom and dad, which that is what caught my attention because I think that that is the most important job title too. And then she currently lives in Nashville and enjoys going for hikes, baking, reading, and gardening. And this is where we super connect. She is also a bit of a learning junkie. So, welcome to the podcast, Kristin. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So, tell us, how did you get to being a parent coach?
I think it kind of is a series of things. I have a tendency to need kind of a two by four upside the head to get the message, and I
Nice.
had, I had a maybe some of you are the same, and I feel like God sends me messages through through life and all things, and yeah, basically I had kids and I had a master's in education, and I thought like I knew it all. I knew I was the best parent there was. At least that's what my ego was telling me, right? Because I had
Well,
all
you
the
had the
education.
education. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the education, so therefore I knew how to put it into practice. Um, but there was a series of things. My oldest son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Um, and that was kind of like the starting of our relationship kind of unraveling. And it got to be a point where our relationship became just transactional. It was like, hey,
Mhm.
can you take out the trash? Hey, what do you have for homework? Hey, have you applied for college yet? Hey, have you? And these are all things that he's done or has to do. And it wasn't really any depth to the relationship. And it kind of evolved over time in that way, right? Because it started with the diabetes. And I say that because it got to be what's your blood sugar? Did you do insulin yet?
Mhm.
Do you need me to order more insulin? Like all those kind of like medical questions. And it got to be really bad and didn't feel good. And there were moments where we didn't get along. And there was one moment in particular that it got really bad. And I asked him to leave when he was
Mm.
16. And so a long ways from that like perfect parent pedestal I put myself on when he was very little, um, to where he's 16 and I'm telling him to get out. Um, and it was in that moment that I was like, I need to do something different because what we're doing is getting worse. It's not getting better. It's not just a phase. It's not just him. I also play a role in this. And so I sought help. And that led me to parent coaching and learning how to better communicate and create better connections with my child, which is what I wanted all along. So
Mm.
it's kind of
I
fun that way.
that's amazing, and I really appreciate your frank whatever that word
I'm a little
frankness. Thank
blunt
you.
sometimes.
Well, so because we had a similar situation in our home, of there is this, come to Jesus moment of
Yeah.
listen, I love you and I would rather cut off my right arm than say what I'm going to say next to you. But if this doesn't change, you will have to leave,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that no parent wants to get there. And so we kind of want to rewind the clock and say, you know, maybe not what can we do to prevent it, but what can we do? Because the teenage years are so turbulent
Oh, yeah.
for,
Absolutely.
I mean, for a myriad of reasons, but, there's just a lot of hormones going on between. And And so when you said, our relationship was so transactional, um, that was a term that I hadn't heard before, and I can see how it'd be so easy to fall into it. So, how did you replace transactional relationships? And you're talking about in the teenage years that you started making this change, right?
Yeah, this was teenage years for sure.
Mm.
Because also like COVID was happening about this time, and
Oh,
there
yeah.
was all sorts of things that were going on, and he was mad about COVID and not being able to hang out with his friends and anxious and all of those things, as we all were, right? Nobody really knew
Right.
what to do and what was right. Um, yeah, it became transactional because that was me trying to connect with him. I didn't know how to get him out of his bedroom other than to say, go take out the trash, right?
I'm
And
laughing because I am
it,
like, I've had these like literal thoughts, and it's like, and it's just not the greatest motivation is to like,
no, yeah, no, of
hey,
course.
I want us to be connected. Do a chore.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Go do a chore. But it was a way for me to get him out of his bedroom. It was a way for me to have a reason to enter his bedroom. It was a way for me to have a reason to have any kind of conversation with him, even though it wasn't a conversation. It was me talking at him and demanding something. I didn't know how else to do it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I don't even know how I came into that habit. It kind, like I said, it kind of evolved, and you wake up one day and you're like, this isn't working. How did we get so far off track? Like we were really good during these years, during 0 to 8, and then somewhere between 9 and 16, we lost our way.
Yeah.
And why is that? Is that because of life? Is that because of the diabetes? Is that what started it? I kind of feel like it did. But maybe he feels differently. I'm not really sure. But yeah, so we went from these transactional conversations of like take the trash out, go wash the dishes. You left a mess in the kitchen. I feel like those were the ones I asked him regularly.
Yeah.
Take your clothes out of the dryer. To having like really great conversations, and I changed that by, instead of being the one trying to control the conversation and trying to, they call it parent over the child. So that's me dominating the child
Hmm.
in this case, to try and have conversations with him and trying to meet him where he's at. So when he would push back on not wanting to empty the trash can, it was, okay, tell me about that. Instead of like, you need to go do it now. It was, tell me about that. When's a good time for you? And he's like, well, right now I'm playing video games with my friends online. I don't want to stop to do that. Okay. Would it be fair to ask you to do it in an hour? Yeah, I can do it in an hour. Okay, cool. Great. Then we'll plan on that. Now, is it fail safe? No. But did it offer an opportunity to have more meaningful conversations? And then was he also considered in some of these plans? Because I wasn't considering him. I wasn't interested in his needs really when I was telling him to go take out the trash. I was concerned about me needing the trash out.
Oh yeah. I can totally relate to how, and I'm thinking, transactional relationships or conversations, that can't be just parent and child. I mean, I'm like literally going through all my conversations with my husband in the last 2 days, like, huh. We
Yeah.
got a lot of transactional conversations going on,
Yeah. I think
just
it's,
of this motive of like, just get things done in life,
yeah,
like, let's just check the boxes, and then we can calm down and then we'll be able to connect. Except that,
you
10
don't.
o'clock at night, we're still checking those boxes of, did you check that? Did you do that? Did you do that? And it's like, oh my gosh.
The
So, what
reality
kind of
is,
conversation would you have instead of a transactional conversation? What
yeah,
would you
so
call it?
it's more of a connection based conversation.
Connection. Okay.
Or I talk about them being solution based conversations, right?
Mm,
I was talking to him about the problem, and he had to fix it rather than us having to fix it. And
mm.
so it's more of a solution based, like, okay, I'm noticing that you left a mess in the kitchen. What can we do about it? Now some parents would be like, yeah, have them clean it up. No kidding, right? Like that's an easy fix. Well, but why? Why is this continuing to happen? And so I encourage parents to ask questions, get curious, rather than coming to the conversation with a pointing of the finger. Come with the question of, hey, I'm noticing and I'm curious. I'm noticing XYZ. So I'm noticing every time you and I have a conversation, we end up arguing. That doesn't feel good to me. I'm curious, what would you like to see different? And that just changes everything, right? Because now
Oh
I've
my
invited
gosh.
him to the conversation instead of me being the one dictating the conversation and the demands.
That is so good. Did you guys hear that? She literally gave us a script. I'm noticing fill in the blank, and I'm curious, why is that? What do you think? That's
Yeah.
I've been coaching for a long time, and I have found that the secret sauce, like, what set me up, my coaching changed my parenting. And it was because of this little piece right here is learning how to ask open-ended questions to people. What do you think? Instead of what I was doing before, which was assuming that I knew exactly what they were thinking and I don't need to ask them.
And that's a really common mistake in parents, right? Because when they're really little, we're used to making all the decisions for them. And we're used to having to be in tune with them and know how they're feeling, right? When a baby cries, there's different cries, right? We know a cry who's hungry and a cry who's
Mhm.
got gas. And we know a cry
Right.
who's tired, right? As a mom, you kind of start to differentiate between those kind of cries. So we're always kind of passing judgment on our kids and assuming we know what they need. Well, as they get a little bit older, they have to have that they may change. I mean, we hope them that they change, right? We don't want them
Yes.
to be the same when they're 16 as when they're 5.
Do you have gas?
Right, exactly. But we continue to assume. We
Yeah.
assume that we know what's right for our children. We assume that we know that what they're feeling. But the reality is we haven't asked them. We haven't asked them what's going on in their life. And so oftentimes they actually don't feel seen or heard in our relationship. And so then we get to where we're just grabbing at straws, trying to make something stick, right? Trying to make something work between the two of us. Um, and 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 it doesn't feel good to either party. That's the reality. We have to come to that realization, hey, we're on the same team. We both
Yes.
want the same thing. We both want to feel seen. We both want to feel heard. We both want to feel loved and safe and secure and all of those things. Oh, but somehow we're going against each other instead of working together.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so, I liked how you were also talking about, I want to go back to what you said about parenting over a
Yeah.
child. Yeah. Like, what does that look like? And what would you recommend instead of parenting over a child?
I think of parenting over as the parent who is needing control. I think of
Mm,
it. I think of it as like old-fashioned parenting in a lot of ways, where the parent says, "You will do X, Y, Z. You will do," without taking into consideration of the child's thoughts, feelings, actions, anything. And then what? And then there's the opposite spectrum, which is parenting under. So that's where the child gets to dictate the things that are happening and going on. And neither one feels good to either party, right? If we're parenting
yeah.
over or we're parenting under. So I talk to parents about parenting with your child, and that's where those open conversations happen. I've noticed, I'm curious, what are your suggestions to change? Because it doesn't feel good to me. I'm assuming it doesn't feel good to you. How can we do different? And like I said, that kind of comes as we um, as we grow. Some examples of parenting over would be you coming to your child, and I'm going to use a teenager experience, but it would go for any age. Um, your curfew is 9:30. You'll be home by 9:30, or else XYZ. There's often usually a threat involved, right?
Of course.
Um, Younger one, you will clean your bedroom, or you don't get to play video games, right? So those are kind of parenting over moments. And some of parents may be sitting there going, "Yeah, I do that." And that's okay. That's okay because what we're doing is we're trying to create some awareness around that and recognizing where you're going to meet some resistance with your children is when they don't agree with those commands or demands that you have put on them. And we want them, it's interesting because we want them to be independent, but we don't want them to stand up to us because we feel like that's disrespectful.
I
But
literally
yet,
knew where you were going to go on this because I am just like, that has been like the balance. It's like, I want you to stand up for yourself with the world. You need to be a strong person, have your own backbone, but not with me. And it's
right.
like, they've got to practice somewhere. They've got to like step over the
Yeah.
line and back from the line. And we've got to be, somewhere it's got to be a little bit messy. Otherwise,
Well,
it's going to be
and
out messy, with their first boss or something, and they're going to get
yeah,
fired.
absolutely. And then they're going to get fired. And so I always tell parents, like, you're there to practice with them, right?
Yeah.
We want them to stand up to you and to say no. Ooh, no is a big trigger for parents. You mean I'm the
Oh, yeah.
parent? I'm the one who's controlling this. I'm the one who's supposed to get the say. And your child says no. So rather than having that be a trigger, get curious. I'm curious. Why are you saying no to that?
Yeah.
Okay, what can we do? I'd like this, you'd like this. Where can we meet in the middle? And instead, I'm talking about teaching compromise. I'm talking about negotiation skills. I'm talking about these things that are going to serve your children in life because they're going to have a teacher that doesn't like them. They're going to have a teacher that they feel gave them an unfair grade. They're going to have a boss that asks them to do something that they don't morally agree with or
Oh, yeah.
anything. So how are they going to be able to stand up to their peers or to a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a spouse or where they don't have to feel silenced? We want them to practice these negotiation skills because it's going to serve them the rest of their life.
Yes. I hope that everybody is hearing what Kristen is saying here because where else are they going to get this practice? They're not going to get it with their friends. They're either going to be the leader of the peer group or they're going to be the follower in the peer group. But there has to be kind of a safe place to practice. And this is something that I heard somebody recently kind of break up the childhood years in like 4-year segments. Like 0 to 4 is kind of like, you're just kind of training them, like don't touch the stove,
Yes.
don't stick a knife in the socket, type, just, and you don't need to give them explanations because they're not getting explanations yet. But then 5 to 8 is when, we get like really, really heavy explanation stage is the way this person was explaining it to me. And then 9 to 12 is when you're really transitioning them towards independence. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is so much earlier than I would have thought. And then there was like the idea of 13. And the way he was going on was like from the Jewish calendar of, like you have a bar mitzvah or bat
Oh
mitzvah
yeah.
at 13, and they're considered an adult at that point. And well, to be an adult, that means that you have to weigh the consequences of your own actions, which means that back it up, there's got to be this transitioning, trusting stage of, hey, I'm letting you experience the consequences, and then there's the training before that of, these are the consequences that might happen if you do and don't do this. And anyway, it just made sense the way that he divided it up. And I thought, wow, that is so, it's helpful for me, to
Mhm.
kind of think in stages of, and also to, like I said, it's such an earlier schedule than because I'm thinking, my, I've got all this that I need to teach my kids before they're 18 because I might not get a chance after that. And well, you do. They come back to you after they're 18 and they might ask questions or whatever. And also they stop listening way before 18.
So
So those, there's a time when they're like soaking it in and sponges. And then
yes,
there's a time when they're like, Mom, and they're
yes,
rolling their
totally.
eyes at you. And it's like, ah,
What I'm going to say though is it's never too late, right? So if you
mm,
have an adult child that you don't have a great relationship with, it's never too late. And the reason I say that is because it depends on where you're coming. Whatever energy you're bringing to the relationship can change as soon as you are able to lead with love and lead with that connection and lead with non-judgment, because as soon as the adult children feel that judgment, they're going to push you away, right?
oh
But
yeah.
they want you to come and listen. And I think it's really hard in our society today to actually really just sit and listen to what others are saying because we are so busy and so used to moving or looking at a device or Our to-do list is running nonstop in our head. And can you actually sit and be present with your child and really truly listen to what they say? If you're really truly listening to what they say, you are able to repeat back some keywords and phrases they've said to you.
Mm,
You're able to ask a question about what they said to you to keep them talking, right? Because
yeah.
we want to have that conversation about the things they're interested in, things they like. And they can only feel comfortable with those conversations if you are sitting there in non judgment. If they can sense or feel from you that you are judging the conversation or the things they are saying, or maybe you're even tuning out, maybe you're pulling your to-do list off in your head while they're talking, they're going to sense that shift in energy, and then you've lost them, right?
Mm,
They're going to
that's
move
so
away from
good.
that. But I
Yeah.
but I will say that when you said 0 to 4, you're learning things like don't touch the stove. I would absolutely agree. You can really start to have conversations with kids of like, I've noticed I'm curious. I would say 5 and above,
Hmm.
but that doesn't say for all kids, right? These are there's always outliers, right?
Of
Of
course. Yeah.
so I always tell parents that child development's not linear. So something your child can do today is not necessarily something they can do tomorrow. So there's a lot of repetition that happens. And that
That
goes
is
until
super interesting. That right there. I swear my kids, it's like you knew how to clean your room. And it's like you forgot.
yeah,
It's like
they
it
do.
it like it went away. What happened? Did aliens come in the middle of the night and just lift the knowledge out of your head? Or
Yep, literally.
I always
It-
felt like my kids were on like this teeter totter where, like my daughter was,
yeah,
checking the boxes, whatever. And my son was the one that I had to remind. And then all of a sudden, one day I noticed my son's room was staying clean. It was like,
yeah,
wow,
they'd
good job,
switch.
son. And yeah, and she wasn't. And I'm just like, what just happened?
Yep, that's also totally normal. And thank goodness they don't do it at the same time, right?
Yeah. I know. I would have been spoiled. I would have done that whole, yeah. Oh, look at what a wonderful mom I am. I should write a book on how to raise teenagers. Their rooms are clean.
Exactly. Or the opposite, if they were both needing your support at the same time,
Oh
how
gosh.
stressful that would be, and how
Exactly.
overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, the brain doesn't fully develop until they say between 25 and 28.
Yeah, that's really
And I think we forget
mind
that.
boggling. My mom said, so my mom, I'm the oldest of nine. So she's had nine children. And she says, yeah, between 18 to 25, it's like you guys went off, did your own thing, like barely I could connect with you guys. And then at 25, you came back and was like, you wanted to do all the talking again, like catch up for all those years. And
That's
and it never
awesome.
stopped since then. Yeah. And it really was. I mean, it was just kind of like, and there's just this point where, like I couldn't tell you anything. And then all of a sudden, you're asking me about everything again.
Well, those are the college years. So
Yeah,
maybe mom didn't want to know everything.
exactly. Yeah, this little subtle agreement that let's not
Right.
worry mom about that. No,
Exactly.
I think that probably when I look back, biggest mistake that the biggest parenting mistake that I made that I had to grow past was parenting from fear.
Mm,
Reacting really strongly from a fear and a desire to keep them safe and keep them protected. And
that's
and
very real.
then and a lot of times it would be, so then I would literally be overreacting to, I mean, imagine if you saw a 4-year-old dashing into traffic and the way you yell at them because, you're terrified. Bring that, into daily life, about 100 different things of, I'm just overreacting out of fear. And I was, it took a while for me to realize that parenting from fear, you're just never going to do high quality parenting, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. When you're parenting from fear, you're parenting in the future that hasn't happened.
Mm,
So it takes you
so
out of
good.
being present. Like you actually cannot be present with your children because you're acting and talking as though it's in the future and that it's
Yeah,
happening.
we're in an imagination and not even a great imagination. It's not like, whoa, wait, won't this be wonderful? It's like, no, no, no. What if this happens? Fear, fear, fear. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And actually it kind of like ping pongs you back to the past, right?
Mm,
Because you have somewhere justified that this fear is worthy. because it's happened in your life, or you've seen it, or you've heard about it, or you've internalized it some way.
Oh, for
But
sure. Yeah, of
you're
course.
ping-ponging between the present and or between the past and the future, and you miss the present entirely. And if you are thinking in the past and in the future, you physically and mentally cannot be present with your children,
Mm.
and they sense
So
that.
so how is there any technique, tip, or reminder for us as parents, like bringing ourselves back to the present? Like, what would
Yeah.
you recommend?
Yeah, I think that kind of comes back with being calm, right?
Mm.
And being able to find that calm and that peace inside of you. Because when I talked about sitting down with your children and listening to them, you have to be able to be fully present with them, which means you can't be thinking of your to-do list. You can't be thinking of fears. You can't be thinking of something you did yesterday that you wish you hadn't done or whatever. You have to be able to be kind of quiet and sit here. So there's a couple of things that I always suggest parents do, and especially moms. I feel like we're really bad at this. Um, Maybe dads are too, but I'm a mom, so I can relate to that. But I don't think that we do very well in our self care when we're a parent. I think we have this notion, and maybe society tells us that we have to be everything and do everything for our children. And I know there's a big push since 2020 for better mental health and self care and all of that. But I think there's a misconception on what self care actually is. And self care sounds great when you're going to get a massage, or you're going out for a girls' night with the girls, or you're going on a trip, or all these things, but they're really big and really costly. And those are not things that you can actually apply in the minute to minute life, right? So when I'm talking about self care, I'm talking about, did you drink water today? Did you take a shower? Hey, how many meals have you eaten? Are you staying up too late, binge watching your favorite show till 2 in the morning? And so then your kids get up at 6. Are you functioning on a good amount of sleep? Um, are you um, are you getting an opportunity to get outside, go for a walk?
Mm.
Things that like help to soothe you and calm you are going to be things that are going to benefit your family, because you're going to be a better person. You're going to be a happier person. So there are things that help to calm people. Maybe you like to run your hands under cold water. Maybe you like to listen to your favorite music in the morning while you're cooking breakfast. Maybe you like to maybe you like to stretch. Maybe you don't have time to exercise, but you got time to stretch. Just little things that can help. Of course, there's the take some deep breaths, right? Find a moment to get grounded, kind of things. But not everybody has that awareness to take 3 deep breaths to know that that's gonna calm them. And
Mm.
then I would say then the next biggest thing is to remember to pause. When you're having an interaction or a conversation with anybody in your family, it doesn't have to be your child or not, you do not need to respond as though it's an emergency. They don't need your response right now. Unless it's truly an emergency and I say it's blood or fire, then that's a good measurement of you should
Blood or
respond.
fire, people.
Right? You
Carry
should
on.
respond as an emergency. Otherwise, practice taking a deep breath before you answer anybody,
Oh, that's so good.
because we have to
That's
slow down.
we do. We really, really do. Listen, we've realized this. The world's not going to slow down for us.
No.
So I think we have to be looking at our lives and our pace, and also, yeah, I mean, that was another, regret that I had, is how much I was hurrying my kids in
Mm,
the younger years. Hurry up and da da da, hurry up and da da da.
yeah.
And like I said, I did not realize it until, I started understanding, oh, wow, April, look at your brain. And now look at how your brain is affecting you. Now look how you and your attitudes of rush and scarcity and worry and fear, and there's not enough, is spilling over and pretty much, running your parenting. And, like I said, I was fortunate that that realization hit around when my kids about 12 and 14. And I loved what you said about how it is never too late. I mean, everybody needs to hear this. It's no matter what the state of your parenting, your relationship with your child is, um, it's it's never too late.
Even if your child doesn't respond or reply to you, I mean, I'm talking about the older children who might have a
Oh
cell
yeah.
phone. They're off at college. They still appreciate a text message from you. Even if you are in a bad relationship with your child, sending a text message saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you today and hope you're having a great day." I
Yeah.
mean, that's that's so important and impactful, even if they don't reply.
Yeah.
You
I
know that
love
you've
that.
done the best that you
Yeah, I
could.
love that we get to decide as parents how we want to show up regardless of our child's behavior.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to kind of separate those two out. Like, even if my 3-year-old is having a meltdown tantrum, I do not have to melt down on the floor and with her. I
No,
can
absolutely not.
hit pause, even though I feel like it. It's like, no, no, no. One of us is going to keep in our sane mind. And, even if, one of my children, may act like they, totally do not want to hear from me. Still get to decide how I want to think about them, how I want to reach out to them, with no expectations that they reciprocate in some kind of exact manner or not. And
Our job as parents is to create a safe harbor for our children,
oh gosh,
whether
it's so
that looks like emotionally or physically or mentally. Our job is to create that safe harbor, but it is not our job to become the storm, right?
good.
Our job is to create that safe harbor. We do not have to take on the emotions and the feelings that our children have. If our children are feeling sad or upset about something, we do not also have to feel sad or upset. If our children are happy or excited, we do not also have to feel happy or excited. We get to have our own emotions. And I think sometimes, at least I talk to a lot of parents and they have a hard time separating their emotions from their children's. They
Yeah.
take on all of their children's emotions. Well, I'm sorry, no wonder you're exhausted. That's exhausting to carry someone else's emotions around all day. I mean, it's hard enough to carry our own. And especially when you don't know the basis or the reason or but also you're taking away from your children the opportunity to just sit with their emotions and process them. And it's okay for you to sit there and be that safe space and know that this is normal, this is human, everybody goes through this. This is a part of being a parent, this is a part of being a child, and I get to sit with my child while they go through it. And I can help them to be more emotionally secure and emotionally stable and have a higher emotion IQ when they're older, and even when they're younger. When we do this practice of creating the safe harbor.
It's so good. That's so good. And I love the picture that you paint here with this safe harbor. I know that I think it was about, let's see, my kids are 19 and 21. So it was about 2 years ago when I intentionally set aside like the whole year. And I was like, if they want to talk, I will stop everything and listen.
Yeah.
And I had to really be intentional because otherwise, I can roll past all kinds of things, like there's always a to-do list in my mind.
Sure.
But I bumped it up in the priority list and it's like, listen, their time at home is limited and I don't know when it's going to happen. And I remember, you guys, you're going to know this is true. Their idea of when is a good time to talk is like 10 o'clock at night.
Or later.
Yeah. And you're just like, okay. Help me, Jesus, to stay awake.
Usually been asleep for an hour by the time they're like, hey, I got something really important to tell you.
You're just like, okay, we're on
Yes.
and stay
Exactly.
calm. Stay calm.
For me,
Because
it's not about
more than
staying calm at that point. It's about waking up and being like, okay,
okay,
brain, wake up.
quickly, quickly wake up to catch my tongue before it leaves my mouth.
Exactly.
But
So
yeah,
funny.
because it's bad. I remember reminding myself, they at this stage, they just need to hear themselves talk. Like they
Yeah.
just need to have a place where they can talk it out and think through by talking it out. And they're also getting to the age where these are their decisions to make.
Yes.
And so, they're the ones that are going to have to live with them. I'm going to be the place where they can talk it out. And
And
I
they're
would
mostly
not, I
just,
mean, 10 years
oh,
before that, I
sorry.
just would not have been able to do that. I just didn't have that awareness because I was making the same mistake that you were talking about, my emotions were tied to their emotion. And so I needed them to have a good day so I could have a good day.
Yeah.
And when you realize that truly your emotions do not have to be tied to somebody else's emotions, your emotions are coming from your own brain and theirs are coming from theirs. And somebody can be the emotional adult in the room and it can be you. It's
Absolutely.
very freeing. It's very, very freeing. Takes a little
Well,
practice, but it's very freeing.
absolutely. When you said something really important, that when your teenagers come to talk, they just need to hear themselves talk. And
Mm,
it's true. They're not looking for you to solve anything. They're looking for you to listen and to be a sounding board. And they're not, I mean, that's how they process it, right? They're talking out
yeah.
loud to you as a confidant. But the moment you say, well, you should do, you've lost them, right?
Oh, yeah.
They are not looking for your advice or your experience from life. They're really looking for you to hear them and be like, wow, that's really hard. And I love that you said you wanted to stop whatever you were doing to be with them whenever they wanted to talk to you, because that's super important. When we're multitasking, actually, our brains are not capable of multitasking, no matter how much we think we are. It's actually not possible. We can either dedicate our time and energy to one thing or the other, but we can't be doing both at the same time. And people who are trying to have a conversation with you can feel it. And if that's your children, they can feel it and they'll be turned off by it. Really good conversation includes eye contact. It includes facial expressions, right? Listening and hearing some of their words and repeating them back to them. Sometimes it might include physical touch, right? Some children like to have like either a hand on their shoulder or a back rub or a hug. Those are things that are going to improve the listening experience and the
Mm.
connection experience. When we can listen better to our children, we can connect better with them.
And it's so good. And at the end of the day, it's the connection I think is what we're all after
Yeah,
is,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, I think that, like you said, it's the most important job that we just aren't trained for.
Oh,
you're,
true.
I remember, at the hospital, they give you the baby and they're just going to let you walk out of the hospital with a human being. And you just have this moment of, oh my gosh. But even if there was a lot of training, like you being the education expert, having all these degrees, there's still so much uniqueness in each child. And so to be able to just recognize that in your child and then give them the gift of listening and connection and y- that'll cover a multitude of sins. Let me just say it that way. And a good apology.
Yeah,
I've
I
learned the
think
art of a good apology. I mean, like if I feel like, oh my, I mean, I remember, and it was probably about 6 months ago, I just really felt a prompting of, I don't know if this is going to land or not, but 5 years after the fact, I realized I made a mistake about something.
mm,
And, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I can't take it back. I can't change, but I just want you to be aware that I'm aware of it and I'm sorry. And, I hope you'll forgive me. And it was humbling, but I don't know. I hope it was healing at the same time. But
oh, it is, absolutely, even
so,
if it's 5 years delayed.
yeah.
I think any recognition of a past pain is
Mm,
incredibly healing, because, I mean, and I've had those conversations with my son to say, "Hey, I messed up. I messed up, and I'm sorry. I didn't listen to you. You kept trying to tell me, and you had to keep getting louder and punch holes in the walls to get my attention, which were less than ideal. But like I said, I don't get the message very easily, and I really needed a 2x4 upside the head or a hole in my wall to kind of recognize that he doesn't feel heard. He didn't feel heard, and all he wanted was to feel love. and he felt judged instead, and he felt critiqued, and he felt only a means of doing chores, a laborer, so to speak, but he didn't get paid for it.
Slave
But
labor.
exactly. But those apologies go a long way in healing that relationship. And it's an important apology of just saying, like, I'm really sorry. I messed up. Sometimes you can say what you learned from it. I don't like the way this feels. I'd like to do this differently next time. But what's really important is that you don't include a but. You know,
Oh,
I'm sorry, but you blank blank. And
no.
I think that's, maybe a skill that past generations have used, thinking that that was a true apology, but really that's still blaming.
I look at that as like, that's just a way for me to insert my opinion in a
Yeah,
different way, like, "Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry that you feel that way, but da, da, da." It's like, I'm not really sorry.
No, you're
I'm
not
just
sorry at
looking to
all.
I'm just looking to share my opinion one other way. Maybe you'll hear it this way since you didn't hear it the other 10 ways I said it to you. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, and it takes time to hear things, right? Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to say them 100 times, but they won't get it till 101.
Well, and like what you said, I mean, I still resonate with what you said, about needing to hear it, be hit upside the head by a 2x4. I'm like, I remember having a coach, and when she said something to me the third time, I was like, April, get this down. This is 3 times that somebody you're paying to help you has told you the exact same thing, and it's all like,
Yeah.
I just blew past the first two, and it's like realizing, of course, our kids are doing the exact same thing, and
You can only hear what you can hear in the moment, right? Where you have to be in the right place to receive it.
so
And
it's ridiculous of me to have the expectation that my kids are going to hear and remember everything that I've ever said to them the
they're
first
not.
time.
They're not. And they're especially not going to if you're doing the dishes while telling them to do something or
Oh
something,
gosh, no.
because that's multitasking and your attention is on the dishes and not on them. Um, Hearing actually increases like what, 20% just by making eye contact, like
Oh, that's insane.
actual listening ability. And because some of our listening actually goes to like lip reading, right?
Oh, wow, I did not know that. That is so cool. Okay, so everybody hear this. Slow down, practice the pause. What was the other thing?
Invite them to a conversation.
Invite them to a conversation. I'm like, I should have been writing these
Yeah,
down.
absolutely. Take care of yourself. That was something else
Oh, yes.
about self-care.
And that is a weird topic that people might not hear, but I think that this topic of self-care, there's just been a lot of misinformation around and things like that, but I think one of the reasons why the next generation is not so keen on maybe having children, having raising families is because they associate with so much sacrifice, on mom's
Yeah.
part and things like that. You know, that's kind of on us if we're saying, yeah, I can't take care of myself because I'm taking care of you guys. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's how God really designed it to be. I think it's the better that we take care of ourselves, the better able we are to take care of who God has entrusted into our care.
I mean, that's the saying. If you got to fill your own cup before you can fill others. I mean, if you
Yes.
are literally running on empty, it always comes back to me, the story of Mary and Martha and Jesus.
Mm,
Martha is the one, yeah, Mary's the one that sits at his feet, and Martha's the one that
yes.
does all the tasks.
Yes.
And Mary's the one that gets complimented for stopping and listening and doing. Really, this is really what the most important thing was to sit and listen and talk to them. That's the same for our children, right? But if we are Martha and doing the dishes and cleaning the house, well, I'm going to tell you, I have yet to find the dish fairy or the laundry fairy. And I promise you, if I don't do them, they will still be there. They'll be there tomorrow. They'll be there the next day. They are always there. Even if I do them, I feel like within a minute, there's another dirty dish.
Oh, yeah.
it's a never ending task, right? Same as shoveling in a snowstorm. But but what is the most important thing? Your children are never going to grow up and be like, well, there was never a dirty dish in our sink. Our laundry was done every day. I never had a dirty laundry, right? So what they
Right.
will remember is sitting with you and talking to you and having that relaxed conversation and really learning who they are and them getting to learn who you really are.
Yeah. It's so good. It just keeps on boiling down to just slow down, have the conversations. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
noticing,
true.
I'm curious. Yeah. So
Absolutely. Get
good.
curious. Parents,
Yeah.
get curious. Don't get
Uh,
angry, get curious.
Oh, and that's such a good one. Yes. Instead of like, why would you do that? Well, because it made sense to them at the time.
They might not know why. They might
You're
not know why.
right.
But you
No.
can get curious about how we can do it differently next time.
Right. Or, when you were doing that, what were you thinking was going to happen? That open ended question. When you were doing that, what did you think might happen? Well, I kind of thought that, that at least starts a
Right?
conversation. So,
What I
oh,
find with some young boys, you might even get like, I don't know. They literally were not thinking.
no, which by
They
the
were
way
doing.
is a wonderful thing. But I remember talking to one mom one time, and she was talking about her son and how action oriented he was. He
Mhm.
just does things without thinking. And the way she was describing him, it reminded me of my husband actually. And it's like, okay, it might be driving you crazy right now, but I'm telling you, when they grow up to be a full grown man, they conquer the world because they get so much done because they don't let self doubt and procrastination slow them down. They're just in action like that. And so, my sympathies with you now, but also don't trade that out of go with their personality on this. Let them, he's an action taker. That's a good thing. So, before we close, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience about parenting and building a deeper connection with their kids?
Um, I think the thing to remember is that we're on the same team
Mm,
with you're on your children. You're on the same team. You both want the same goals. And remember, sometimes we get into our head with parenting, meaning like we get concerned with social concerns or we get, oh, I have to do this because I've been told to do this. And really start trusting yourself from your heart. Like get out of your head a little bit and really start leading from your heart and asking yourself, am what I'm doing right now leading from love? And am I being present? If the answer
mm,
is yes to both of those, then you're doing the right thing. If you're leading from your head and you're getting too intellectual or you're even getting too controlling and you're like, I need this to be this way. Are you leading with love and are you being present? I would say the answer is no. So just
yeah,
a nice little check for yourself to realign.
that is so good. Listen, people, control is coming from fear, not love. I
True.
mean, because we're wanting a certain outcome, because we've judged that to be better than what might happen if we just l- lead from love.
Well, and sometimes it turns out even better than we could have ever predicted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let it happen.
I think parenting is the best journey. I mean, it's the becoming a parent deepened my faith,
Yeah,
made me understand myself, because you don't have kids without seeing yourself in your kids, you know,
totally. Totally.
and be like, oh gosh,
It's
I'm
the
sorry I
if
gave
you
that to you.
exactly. But if you allow it, it's the greatest personal growth journey.
And it is. It's the
But you have to
greatest
allow
personal
it.
growth. It's the greatest connection. It's like having kids. It's like wearing your heart, outside your sleeve for the rest of your life.
Totally.
Um, it's a beautiful, beautiful journey. And so if you are a parent, I hope that this episode has encouraged you and also maybe reassured you that if you're slowing down to connect and have conversations, that's not a time waster. That is the best use of your time on any given day. because at the end of the day, when you look back, those moments of connection are going to be the things that you remember. So, Kristin, this has been amazing. So, if you guys want to know more about Kristin, she has a website, KristinSchmoke.com, KristinSchmoke. And also a really great Instagram feed. I was checking out your Instagram feed and I'm like, oh, some really good posts on here. So that's Kristin.schmoke.parenting on Instagram. Do I have that right?
You do. You do.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anything else before we close?
No, just thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I've enjoyed our conversation immensely.
Oh, I loved it. And like I said, I love how honest you are because, I think sometimes, we hit the volatile teenage years and we're just like, I might be the only one. And it's like, no, you probably aren't. If there is a hole in your wall, that is not unusual for the teenage years. And
Totally. I
yeah,
think it's hard for people to talk about it though. There's a lot of
yeah.
shame and a lot of vulnerability that comes with it. And
No,
that,
I remember one of my brothers learning how to mud and tape a wall because
yep. We
because
did
if he
that
made
too.
the hole, he's gonna fix the hole.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened at our house.
Oh, it's so good. All right. And one more thing. If someone wants help with their parenting, how can they get help from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with families one on one, and some people like to have a more private setting. And then I also have a small group session that I run every 12 weeks.
Ooh, both of those sound like amazing, amazing options. So, and they can go to your website and find out about that.
Absolutely.
All right. KristinSchmoke.com, KristinSchmoke.com, one-on-one or group. She's got options, y'all. So fancy.
Thanks, April.
All right. Bye-bye.